The great hall of the Zephyrian coalition fell silent as Ambassador Cathara stepped forward. Her blue-scaled hands trembled as she held the datapad containing their last hope. Around the circular chamber, representatives from 7 different alien species watched with hollow eyes. They had already lost so much. The reports from Kepler 442 are confirmed, Cathara announced, her voice breaking slightly. The Vexhi have taken the planet. 3 billion Altarians are dead or enslaved. A low moan came from the Altarian delegate, whose normally bright purple skin had turned pale gray with grief. The Vexhi Empire had been cutting through coalition space like a burning knife through soft flesh. In just 2 years, they had conquered 12 worlds and enslaved 40 billion beings. The Vexhi were everything the coalition was not. Where the coalition valued peace and cooperation, the Vexhi lived for war and domination. Their ships were massive black fortresses covered in weapons. Their soldiers were 8 feet tall with thick armor-like skin and 4 arms that could crush steel. They had been conquering worlds for 1,000 years and they never showed mercy. "What about our fleet?" asked General Thorn of the Centaurian Republic. His people were known as the best warriors in the coalition, but even they looked defeated now. "Gone," Cathara replied simply. Admiral Zextai fought bravely at Kepler 442, but the Vexhi had 50 dreadnoughts to our 12. Only 3 of our ships escaped. The chamber filled with the sound of despair. Some delegates wept openly. Others stared at the floor in shock. The hegemony of peaceful worlds had never faced anything like this. For 300 years, they had settled disputes with words, not weapons. They had built a civilization based on trade, science, and mutual respect. Now all of it was burning. "There must be something we can do," pleaded Dr. Velnoon, the chief scientist from Proxima Prime. Her tentacles writhed with anxiety. "What about the defense platforms around Earth too? Or the quantum weapons the Rigelians have been developing?" Cathara shook her head. "The Vexhi have quantum shields. Our weapons barely scratch their ships, and they outnumber us 10 to 1. Every day we delay, they grow stronger with the resources they steal from conquered worlds." "Then we surrender," said Chancellor Mordek of the Outer Rim territories. "We negotiate. Give them what they want." "They want everything," Cathara snapped. "Total submission. They don't negotiate. They conquer, enslave, and strip worlds bare. Look what happened to the Draconians when they tried to surrender. The Vexhi made them watch as they destroyed their homeworld anyway." Silence fell again. Everyone remembered the horrific broadcasts from Draconia Prime. The Vexhi had broadcast the planet's destruction across the galaxy as a warning. Billions of innocent beings turned to ash in seconds. "There might be one option," Cathara said quietly. "But you won't like it." All eyes turned to her. In the desperate silence, even the smallest hope seemed worth grasping. "The humans," she continued. "We could ask the humans for help." The reaction was immediate. Half the delegates started talking at once. The other half looked horrified. "The humans?" General Thorn laughed bitterly. "They've barely left their own solar system. They don't even have proper energy shields yet." "They're primitives," added Dr. Velnoon. "They still use chemical rockets for most of their space travel. What could they possibly do against the Vexhi?" But Cathara had been studying human history for months, ever since the idea first occurred to her. "You're thinking about their technology," she said. "I'm thinking about their nature." She activated the holographic display in the center of the chamber. Images of Earth appeared showing cities, forests, and oceans. Then came the historical records. "Humans have been fighting wars for their entire history," Cathara explained. "Not just for territory or resources, but for ideas, for survival, for each other. They faced extinction dozens of times and always found a way to survive." The images changed, showing ancient human battles, then more recent conflicts. Nuclear weapons, global wars, massive destruction. "They're violent savages," Chancellor Mordek protested. "This proves we should avoid them, not ask for their help." "Look closer," Cathara insisted. "Yes, they fight. But look how they fight. When the Nazis threatened to conquer their world, the humans didn't surrender. They fought back against impossible odds. When alien viruses nearly wiped them out, they didn't give up. They found cures. When their planet started dying from pollution, they didn't flee. They fixed it." She paused, letting the images sink in. "Humans don't know how to quit, ever. Even when facing certain death, they keep fighting. The Vexhi have never encountered anything like that. But their technology," Dr. Velnoon began. "Can be shared," Cathara interrupted. We give them our weapons, our shields, our engines. They give us something we've lost, the will to fight to the death. General Thorne studied the human military records displayed on the screen. These battle tactics, they're brutal, efficient, but their numbers are so small, they have maybe 50 warships in their entire fleet. 50 ships crewed by humans might be worth more than 500 crewed by us, Cathara replied. Look at their training methods. Their soldiers practice for years just to qualify for combat. They study every possible scenario. They never stop improving. The debate continued for hours. Some delegates argued that involving humans would only bring more violence to the galaxy. Others worried that humans might be as dangerous as the Vexhi in the long run. But as reports continued to arrive of new Vexhi victories, the alternatives became clear. We're dying, Cathara finally said. Every day we wait, more worlds fall. More billions die. The Vexhi will reach the core worlds within 6 months. After that, our civilization is finished. She looked around the chamber at the faces of beings whose worlds might be next. I'm not asking you to make humans our overlords. I'm asking you to give them the tools to help us fight. In exchange, we offer them technology, trade agreements, and territorial rights in the outer systems. And if they refuse? Asked Chancellor Mordek. Then we die with dignity instead of living as slaves, Cathara replied. The vote was close, but it passed. Within hours, the Coalition's fastest courier ship was racing toward Sol system, carrying a message that would change the galaxy forever. The transmission was simple and direct. It contained the Coalition's history, their values, and their desperate situation. It showed the Vexhi atrocities in all their horrible detail, and it ended with a plea that would haunt human leaders for years to come. We are dying. Our children are being enslaved. Our worlds are burning. We have heard of your species' great courage and strength. We offer you our technology, our friendship, and our gratitude in exchange for your help. Please, if there is any mercy in your hearts, any sense of justice in your souls, help us stop this evil before it consumes everything we hold. Dear, the message was sent with coordinates to a neutral meeting point and a promise that Coalition representatives would wait there for exactly 30 days for a human response. As the courier ship disappeared into hyperspace, Cathara wondered if they had just saved their civilization or doomed the galaxy to an even worse fate. But with Vexhi fleets growing closer every day, it was a risk they had to take. The humans would answer. She was certain of that. The question was, what would that answer be? Admiral Sarah Chen stared at the alien message for the 3rd time that morning. The holographic display showed scenes that made her stomach turn. Burning cities, enslaved populations, and the systematic destruction of entire worlds. But her expression remained calm and professional as she addressed the emergency session of Earth's Terran Defense Council. The transmission is authentic, she reported, to the 12 council members seated around the polished steel table. We verified the quantum signatures and cross-referenced the star charts. The Zephyrian Coalition is real, and so is their war with this Vexhi Empire. Secretary of Defense Maria Santos leaned forward. What's our assessment of their military capabilities? Chen touched her tablet and new images appeared. Limited. The Coalition species appear to be primarily traders and scientists. Their weapons are advanced but designed for defense, not conquest. Ship designs prioritize comfort and efficiency over armor and firepower. And their enemy? Asked General Jiang Wei, head of Earth's Strategic Planning Division. The display changed again, showing captured footage of Vexhi ships and soldiers. Several council members shifted uncomfortably at the sight of the massive, brutal-looking aliens. Formidable, Chen admitted. Superior numbers, advanced technology, and a military culture built around conquest. They've been expanding for over 1,000 years. By Coalition estimates, the Vexhi Empire controls roughly 15% of this galaxy's inhabited systems. President Catherine Walsh studied the tactical data scrolling past. What do they want from us? Military assistance in exchange for advanced technology and territorial right, Chen replied. Specifically, they're offering gravity drives, energy shield technology, and quantum communication systems. The technological boost would advance our civilization by at least 2 centuries. The council chamber fell quiet, except for the hum of the air recycling system. Finally, Secretary Santos spoke. It sounds too good to be true. What's the catch? The catch, said Dr. James Mitchell, Earth's chief xenobiologist, is that we'd be going to war against an empire that's been conquering worlds since before humans discovered agriculture. This Vex-High force has defeated dozens of species. Some of them were more advanced than we are. On the surface, General Zhang agreed, but I've been studying their tactics with the War College. The Vex-High fight like classical conquerors. Overwhelming force, fear tactics, and resource extraction. They're used to enemies who surrender when the odds get too high. President Walsh raised an eyebrow. And humans don't surrender? Not when we're protecting something important, Zhang replied grimly. But that's not the real issue here. He stood and walked to the display, pointing at the strategic maps. Look at this pattern. The Vex-High advance in straight lines from conquered world to conquered world. They're methodical but predictable. They've never faced an enemy that attacks their supply lines or uses asymmetric warfare. Chen nodded. Our preliminary analysis suggests they're vulnerable to tactics they've never encountered. Hit-and-run attacks, guerrilla warfare, psychological operations. The coalition species fight like gentlemen. We don't. Are you suggesting we could actually win? Asked Dr. Mitchell, incredulous. I'm suggesting something more than that, Chen replied coldly. I'm suggesting we could destroy them completely. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. President Walsh studied the Admiral's face carefully. Explain. Chen activated a new set of projections. The Vex-High Empire is large but decentralized. They depend on a network of supply bases and communication relays spread across conquered territory. Their fleets operate independently, but report to regional commanders. Take out the infrastructure, isolate the fleets, and the whole system collapses. That would require a massive military operation, Secretary Santos pointed out. We're talking about hundreds of star systems across thousands of light years. Which is exactly what I'm proposing, Chen said matter-of-factly. Full mobilization. Convert our entire industrial base to military production. Build a fleet specifically designed to fight this enemy. General Zhang brought up additional data. I've run preliminary simulations. With coalition technology integrated into our designs, we could build ships that are faster, more maneuverable, and more heavily armed than anything the Vex-High have. But it would take everything we have. Define everything, President Walsh said. Every shipyard, every factory, every research facility. Chen replied. We'd need to mobilize the entire population. Draft every eligible citizen. Convert civilian ships to military use. Turn Luna City into a weapons production center. Dr. Mitchell looked horrified. You're talking about turning our entire civilization into a war machine. Yes, Chen said simply. Because anything less won't be enough. She changed the display again, showing casualty projections. The coalition has lost over 50 billion beings in 2 years. The Vex-High show no mercy to prisoners and no respect for surrender. If we're going to fight them, we have to be prepared to fight them to extinction. That seems extreme, President Walsh said carefully. Is it? Chen challenged. Look at their history. Every species that tried to negotiate with the Vex-High was enslaved or destroyed. Every world that surrendered was stripped bare. They're not interested in coexistence. They want total dominance, General Zhang nodded grimly. The Admiral's right. This isn't a border dispute or a trade war. This is a fight for survival. Either the Vex-High Empire ends or free civilization in this galaxy ends. Secretary Santos studied the tactical projections. What would this operation look like? Phase 1. Rapid deployment to coalition space with a small reconnaissance fleet, Chen explained. Assess the situation firsthand and begin intelligence gathering. Phase 2. Massive shipbuilding program while training coalition forces in human tactics. Phase 3. Systematic destruction of Vex-High infrastructure and military capabilities. How long would this take? Asked President Walsh, optimistically. 3 years for complete victory. Realistically, 5 to 7 years for total elimination of the Vex-High threat. Dr. Mitchell shook his head. I still think this is madness. We're talking about committing genocide against an entire species. No, Chen corrected coldly. We're talking about stopping a genocide in progress. The Vex-High made their choice when they started exterminating peaceful civilizations. We're just making sure they can't make that choice again. The debate continued for hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. Earth had faced extinction before and survived through determination and superior strategy. The Holocaust, the nuclear crisis, the climate wars. Humanity had learned hard lessons about the cost of appeasing evil. President Walsh called for a vote. It was unanimous. Within 24 hours, Admiral Chen was aboard the fastest ship in Earth's fleet, racing toward the coordinates provided by the Coalition. Her mission was simple: meet with the alien representatives, confirm their story, and begin humanity's assessment of this new enemy. But Chen already knew what she would find. The Coalition's message had been clear. They were facing an enemy that showed no mercy and accepted no surrender. That was the kind of enemy humans understood all too well. As her ship jumped to hyperspace, Chen reviewed the preliminary war plans her staff had prepared. The Coalition wanted military assistance. They would get more than they bargained for. Much more. The HFY Empire had made a fatal mistake. They had threatened innocent beings and asked for mercy they had never shown others. Now they would learn what happened when you backed Earth's children into a corner. Humanity was coming to war, and they were bringing everything they had. The meeting point was a dead system on the edge of Coalition space. Nothing but empty asteroid fields and the cold light of a dying star. When Admiral Chen's ship dropped out of hyperspace, she found Ambassador Kethara waiting in a small diplomatic vessel, exactly as promised. The first face-to-face meeting between humans and the Zephyrian Coalition took place in the sterile conference room of Chen's flagship. Kethara was smaller than Chen had expected, barely 5 feet tall with blue-scaled skin and large golden eyes that seemed to hold the weight of her entire civilization's suffering. "Admiral Chen," Kethara said, her voice soft but steady, "thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "We don't ignore calls for help," Chen replied, taking a seat across from the alien diplomat. "But before we discuss terms, I need to see the situation myself." Over the next 6 hours, Kethara provided everything: detailed maps of HFY territory, records of their military capabilities, footage from conquered worlds, and casualty reports that made Chen's jaw tighten with controlled anger. The most damning evidence was a transmission the Coalition had intercepted from a HFY commander. "These soft creatures bore us," the 8-foot alien had growled to his subordinates. "Their begging for mercy grows tiresome. Start executing the children first. Their screams are more entertaining." Chen watched the recording without expression, but her hands clenched into fists. When it ended, she looked directly at Kethara. "How many inhabited worlds do the HFY control?" "Over 3,000, Kethara replied. "Most with enslaved populations in the billions. And their military strength?" "Approximately 10,000 major warships plus support vessels and planetary defense systems." Chen nodded slowly. "Ambassador, I'm going to make you a promise. The HFY Empire ends now. Not contained, not negotiated with, not pushed back. Ended. Completely." Kethara's eyes widened. "Admiral, I appreciate your confidence, but surely you understand the odds." "I understand that the HFY have never fought humans," Chen interrupted. "That's about to change." The formal alliance was signed within hours. The Coalition would provide their most advanced technology and full logistical support. Humanity would provide military leadership and strategic planning. But even as Kethara celebrated this diplomatic victory, she noticed something troubling in Admiral Chen's eyes. It wasn't hope or determination. It was the cold calculation of a predator that had found its prey. Chen's reconnaissance fleet spent 2 weeks in Coalition space, gathering intelligence and observing HFY operations. What they found confirmed every worst fear and validated every human suspicion. The HFY weren't just conquerors. They were sadists who enjoyed inflicting suffering on helpless populations. The turning point came when Chen's ships witnessed the fall of Altair Prime. The human fleet arrived just as HFY forces were landing on the planet. Chen watched through long-range sensors as the aliens systematically executed civilians, destroyed hospitals, and burned cities full of non-combatants. "Sir," her tactical officer reported, "we could intervene. Drive them off." "No," Chen replied quietly. "Let them finish. I want every detail recorded." For 3 days, the human ships watched and documented as the HFY turned a thriving world of 8 billion beings into a charnel house. By the time they were finished, fewer than 1 million Altarians remained alive, all destined for slavery. When the recordings reached Earth, the reaction was swift and absolute. President Walsh appeared on every communication channel across human space, her face grim with controlled fury. "Citizens of Earth," she began, "I am declaring a state of total war against the HFY Empire. Every resource, every facility, every person capable of contributing to this effort will be mobilized immediately. The transformation was breathtaking in its speed and scope. Within days, civilian factories were retooling to produce weapons and armor. Shipyards that had been building luxury cruisers started laying down the keels of warships. Research facilities abandoned commercial projects to focus on military applications. The Coalition's technology proved invaluable, but humans adapted it in ways that surprised their new allies. Coalition energy shields were redesigned for maximum protection at the cost of power efficiency. Gravity drives were modified to allow for brutal acceleration that would crush most alien species. Quantum communication systems were turned into tools for coordinating massive fleet operations across impossible distances. Dr. Patricia Voss, Earth's leading military engineer, worked 18-hour days integrating alien technology with human designs. The result was a new class of warship unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "We call them Vengeance-class destroyers," she explained to Kithara during a tour of the Luna City shipyards. "Faster than anything the Vex High have, more heavily armed than their battleships and designed to fight outnumbered." Kithara stared at the massive ship taking shape in the construction bay. It looked nothing like Coalition vessels, which were elegant and designed for peaceful purposes. This ship looked like it had been built for one purpose only: killing. "How many are you building?" she asked. 500 in the first wave," Dr. Voss replied casually, "along with support vessels, carriers, and mobile bases. We estimate we'll have a fleet of 2,000 ships ready within 8 months. 2,000 ships? Kithara gasped. Your entire Space Navy only had 50 ships before the war started. Had, Dr. Voss corrected. We scrapped them all. They weren't designed for this kind of war. The industrial mobilization was only part of the transformation. Human military doctrine was evolving at an unprecedented pace. General Zhang Wei established new training centers where Coalition refugees taught humans about Vex High tactics while human instructors trained alien volunteers in advanced warfare techniques, the Coalition. Fights like they're trying to minimize casualties, explained Sergeant Major Rodriguez to a mixed group of human and alien recruits. That's admirable, but it's not how you win against an enemy like this. The Vex High expect you to be reasonable. They expect you to surrender when things get bad. They expect you to negotiate when you're losing. He gestured to the holographic battlefield display. We're going to give them something they've never seen before. Total war, no mercy, no quarter. No stopping until every last Vex High military asset is destroyed. The psychological transformation was the most dramatic change of all. Humans had always been protective of their allies, but the Vex High atrocities had awakened something primal in human nature. This wasn't just a war for territory or resources. This was a crusade to eliminate an evil that threatened everything decent in the galaxy. Captain Lisa Martinez, commander of the first Vengeance-class destroyer to leave Earth's shipyards, summed up the new human attitude in her final briefing before departure. The Vex High think they're the apex predators in this galaxy, she told her crew. They're about to learn what real predators look like. 8 months after the Coalition's plea for help, the first human battle fleet arrived in alien space. 150 ships carrying 30,000 human soldiers and 10,000 Coalition volunteers. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, studying tactical displays that showed Vex High positions throughout the sector. Begin Operation Righteous Fury, she ordered. The war for the galaxy's future had begun, but it wouldn't be the defensive struggle the Coalition had expected. The humans hadn't come to push back the Vex High invasion. They had come to end the Vex High Empire forever, and they would accept nothing less than total victory. Fleet Commander Zexthul of the Vex High Empire had conquered 47 worlds in his 1,000-year military career. He had faced desperate defenders, superior numbers, and advanced technology, but he had never faced anything like the humans. The first battle at Kepler 186 should have been routine. Intelligence reports indicated a small human fleet had arrived to reinforce Coalition defenses. Zexthul deployed 300 ships against what appeared to be 50 human vessels. The outcome should have been inevitable. It was, just not in the way anyone expected. The human ships moved like nothing Zexthul had ever seen. Instead of forming traditional battle lines, they scattered into small groups that struck from multiple directions simultaneously. Their weapons were devastating, cutting through Vex High's shields like they were made of paper. Worse, they fought with a savagery that was completely alien to galactic warfare. When Vex High ships tried to retreat, the humans pursued them relentlessly. When they attempted to surrender, The humans ignored their transmissions and continued firing. In 6 hours of brutal combat, Zexthol's fleet was reduced to scattered debris and fleeing survivors. "This cannot be," he growled to his remaining ship commanders from the safety of his damaged flagship. "They are primitives. They have barely left their home system." "Commander," his intelligence officer reported, "we're receiving transmissions from the human fleet. They're demanding our complete surrender and the release of all prisoners. Tell them they can negotiate with my weapons," Zexthol snarled. The response came not in words, but in action. Human ships began systematically hunting down every Vex-High vessel in the system, including support ships and evacuation transports. There would be no escape, no regrouping, no second chances. By the time reinforcements arrived from the Vex-High core worlds, Zexthol was dead, and his entire fleet was space dust. The humans had moved on to their next target, leaving behind only a message broadcast on all frequencies. To the Vex-High Empire, your crimes against innocent beings end now. Surrender all prisoners and withdraw from conquered worlds, or we will remove you from the galaxy permanently. You have been warned. Supreme War Leader Korthak received the news of Kepler 186 with disbelief, then rage, then genuine concern. In 5,000 years of expansion, the Vex-High had never lost an entire fleet in a single engagement. The humans had achieved something that should have been impossible. How many ships did they lose? He demanded of his staff. Intelligence suggests fewer than 10 were destroyed or heavily damaged. His aide replied nervously. The rest of their fleet remains combat effective. Korthak studied the tactical reports with growing unease. The humans fought nothing like other species. Instead of protecting their own ships, they used them as weapons, ramming damaged vessels into Vex-High formations to maximize destruction. Instead of avoiding casualties, they seemed to accept losses as long as they inflicted greater damage on their enemies. "Deploy the 3rd battle fleet to intercept them," he ordered. 800 ships should be sufficient to deal with these savages. The Second Battle of Kepler 442 lasted 3 days and ended with the complete annihilation of the Vex-High 3rd Battle Fleet. Human losses 23 ships. Vex-High losses everything. The pattern repeated across a dozen systems. Every time the Vex-High deployed a larger force, the humans found new ways to destroy it. They used psychological warfare, broadcasting footage of Vex-High atrocities to turn conquered species against their oppressors. They employed tactics that violated every convention of civilized warfare, targeting supply lines, communication centers, and even civilian infrastructure that supported the military. Most disturbing of all, they never stopped advancing. Other species fought until they achieved their objectives, then paused to consolidate their gains. The humans simply moved from one target to the next with machine-like efficiency, grinding through Vex-High territory like an unstoppable force of nature. Captain Sarah Kim stood on the bridge of her destroyer, studying the sensor readings from the Vex-High stronghold of Rigel 7. The fortress world was protected by orbital defense platforms, planetary shields, and a garrison of 50,000 elite Vex-High warriors. "Estimated casualties for a direct assault?" she asked her tactical officer. 60% losses minimum, Lieutenant Chen replied. "The defenses are too strong for a frontal attack." "Then we don't attack frontally," Kim said calmly. "Target the water processing plants, power generation facilities, and food distribution centers. Cut the life support to the military bases." "Ma'am," her communications officer interrupted, "that will also affect the civilian population. There are 3 billion enslaved beings on that planet." Kim's expression didn't change. The Vex-High should have thought of that before they enslaved them. "Begin bombardment." The siege of Rigel 7 lasted 8 months. The humans didn't try to take the planet by force. Instead, they systematically destroyed every piece of infrastructure that kept the Vex-High garrison functional. When the defenders finally surrendered, they were suffering from starvation, disease, and complete demoralization. "Where are your terms?" the Vex-High commander asked as he was brought aboard Kim's ship. "Unconditional surrender," Kim replied. "Release all prisoners. Provide intelligence on remaining Vex-High positions. Submit to war crimes tribunals. And if we refuse," Kim gestured to the viewport, where the ruins of Rigel 7's military installations were still burning, "then you die. Your choice." The psychological impact on the Vex-High Empire was devastating. For the first time in their history, they faced an enemy that showed them no mercy and offered them no hope of survival. except through complete capitulation. Entire fleets began surrendering without firing a shot. Garrison commanders abandoned their posts and fled deeper into Vex-High territory. But the humans pursued them everywhere they went. Admiral Chen stood in the command center of her mobile fleet base, studying a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots marked Vex-High positions. Blue dots showed human forces. Green indicated liberated worlds where former slaves were rebuilding their civilizations under human protection. Status. Report, she ordered. 60% of former Vex-High territory is now under our control, reported Colonel Martinez. We've liberated over 800 worlds and freed approximately 2 trillion enslaved beings. Remaining Vex-High strength? Scattered resistance groups and approximately 30% of their original fleet, mostly concentrated around their core worlds. But morale is collapsing. We're receiving surrender offers daily. Chen nodded, but her expression remained cold. Continue the advance. No negotiations, no ceasefires, no mercy. The Vex-High Empire ends when the last Vex-High military unit is destroyed or surrenders unconditionally. Admiral, Dr. Voss's voice came over the communication system from Earth. The coalition leadership is requesting a meeting. They want to discuss post-war arrangements and reconstruction plans. Tell them I'll meet with them when the war is over, Chen replied. Until then, we have work to do. The work was the systematic destruction of everything that had made the Vex-High Empire possible. Every military base, every weapons factory, every symbol of their former power was methodically eliminated. The humans didn't just defeat the Vex-High military, they erased it from existence. In the deepest reaches of Vex-High space, Supreme War Leader Korthak huddled in a bunker beneath his homeworld's surface, watching reports of defeat after defeat. The mighty empire that had dominated the galaxy for millennia was crumbling around him. Sir, his aide whispered, long-range sensors detect human ships entering the outer system. They'll be here in 6 hours. Korthak looked at the weapon in his hand, then at the communication console. He could surrender and face whatever justice the humans had in mind. Or he could end this on his own terms. The choice was no longer his to make. The humans had taken everything else. Now they were coming for him. As the first human ships appeared in orbit above the Vex-High homeworld, Admiral Chen sent a final message to the bunker where Korthak waited. Your empire is finished. Your fleets are destroyed. Your worlds are liberated. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally, or we will finish what you started when you decided to prey on innocent beings. The choice is yours, but your time is up. The Vex-High had learned too late what it meant to face an enemy that would never stop, never forgive, and never show the mercy they had denied to so many others. 1 year after Ambassador Cathara had sent her desperate plea to Earth, she stood in the ruins of what had once been the Vex-High Supreme Command Center. The massive fortress that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was now nothing but twisted metal and broken stone. Human engineers were systematically demolishing what remained, ensuring it could never be rebuilt. It's hard to believe it's over, she said to Admiral Chen, who was reviewing final casualty reports on her portable display. It's over, Chen confirmed without looking up. The last Vex-High military unit surrendered 3 days ago. Their homeworld is under occupation. Their leadership is either dead or awaiting trial for war crimes. Cathara should have felt relief, joy, triumph. Instead, she felt a growing unease that had been building for months. What happens now? Chen finally looked at her, and Cathara was struck by how much the human admiral had changed. A year ago, Chen had been professional but warm, someone fighting for justice and the protection of innocent life. Now her eyes held the cold efficiency of someone who had grown comfortable with the absolute destruction of her enemies. Now we make sure this never happens again, Chen replied. The galaxy needs stability. It needs protection from the next species that decides to follow the Vex-High example. Protection from whom? Cathara asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. From us, Chen said simply. Humanity will establish security zones around all liberated worlds. We'll maintain patrol fleets in every major system. Any species that shows aggressive tendencies will be monitored and, if necessary, neutralized before they become a threat. The casual way Chen spoke of neutralizing entire species made Cathara's blood run cold. Admiral, that wasn't part of our agreement. We asked for help defeating the Vex-High, not for human occupation of the galaxy. The galaxy has proven it can't protect itself, Chen responded. Look what happened. Dozens of advanced civilizations, billions of years of combined development, and you were all helpless against one aggressive species. If we hadn't intervened, the Vexhai would have conquered everything within a century. So you're going to conquer everything instead? Chen's expression hardened. We're going to protect everything. There's a difference, but Kithara wasn't sure there was a difference anymore. Over the past year, she had watched humanity transform from Earth's peaceful children into something that frightened even their allies. The humans had built the largest military force in galactic history, and they showed no signs of reducing it now that the war was over. The meeting with the coalition leadership took place on the neutral world of Proxima Centauri, in a conference facility that was surrounded by human warships for security purposes. Kethara represented the Zephyrians, while delegates from 6 other species sat around the polished table. At the head sat Admiral Chen, flanked by human military officers and civilian officials. The Terran Defense Forces prepared to begin the transition to peacetime operations, Chen announced. We've established garrison fleets in 1,200 strategic systems and begun construction of permanent military bases on 47 worlds. Chancellor Mordek of the Outer Rim Territories raised a trembling hand. Admiral, with respect, we didn't ask you to establish permanent military bases in our territory. You asked us to protect you, Chen replied coolly. This is what protection looks like. But for how long? Asked Dr. Velnoon. When do our worlds regain their sovereignty? Chen studied the alien scientist for a long moment. When we're confident they can defend themselves against future threats. Based on your performance against the Vexhai, I estimate that will take at least a century, maybe longer. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, General Thorne found his voice. You're talking about occupation. Indefinite military occupation of our worlds. I'm talking about preventing another genocide, Chen snapped, her professional mask slipping for the first time. Do you have any idea what we found on those Vexhai worlds? Breeding farms where they raised sentient beings for food. Research facilities where they conducted experiments on children. Mass graves containing billions of innocent souls. She stood and activated a holographic display showing footage from liberated worlds. The images were horrific beyond description. This is what happens when good people do nothing while evil spreads unchecked. This is what happens when civilized beings convince themselves that negotiation and compromise can stop monsters. The alien delegates stared at the images in sick silence. They had seen reports, but experiencing the full scope of Vexhai atrocities was overwhelming. We stopped this, Chen continued. We ended it completely and permanently, and we're going to make sure it never happens again, even if that means making decisions you don't like. Kethara forced herself to speak. What about our freedom? Our right to self-determination? What about the rights of the species that are going to be born in the next 1,000 years? Chen countered. Don't they have the right to live without fear of slavery and extermination? Don't they deserve protection from the next Vexhai Empire? You can't protect the galaxy by controlling it, Kethara protested, can't we? Chen asked. Look around you. For the first time in galactic history, there's perfect peace. No wars, no genocides. No species preying on weaker neighbors. Trade is flourishing. Science is advancing. Art and culture are blooming on worlds that were burning a year ago. It was true, and that was what made it so terrifying. Human occupation had brought unprecedented peace and prosperity to the galaxy. But it was the peace of the conquered, not the free. The humans saved us, Chancellor Mordek said quietly to the other delegates during a break in negotiations. But I'm beginning to think we may have traded one master for another. At least the humans don't eat us, Dr. Velnoon replied with bitter humor. And they're more efficient administrators than the Vexhai ever were. Is that enough? Kethara asked. Safety in exchange for freedom? General Thorne shook his head sadly. It doesn't matter what we think. Look at their fleet deployments. They have more ships in this sector alone than our entire coalition navy ever possessed. They're not asking for our permission. They're informing us of their decisions. When the negotiations resumed, Admiral Chen presented humanity's final terms. The coalition worlds would maintain internal autonomy, but accept human oversight of all military and foreign policy decisions. Trade would be regulated by human administrators to prevent the development of weapons that could threaten galactic stability. Any scientific research with potential military applications would be monitored by human observers. These terms are non-negotiable, Chen stated. You can accept them voluntarily or we can impose them by force. The choice is yours, but the outcome is the same. Kethara looked around the table at her fellow delegates. Fear, resignation, and defeat marked every face. They had called for help and help had come. But salvation had arrived with a price none of them had anticipated. We accept, she said finally. 6 months later, Kethara stood on the observation deck of the new human administrative complex on Zephyr Prime, watching as Earth-built ships patrolled the skies of her homeworld. Children played in the parks below, safe from the horrors that had once threatened to consume their civilization. The economy was thriving under human trade agreements. Crime was virtually non-existent under human security measures. Her people were happier and more prosperous than they had ever been. They were also subjects of an alien empire, just as they had been under the Vexhai. The only difference was that their new masters were benevolent. Any regrets? Admiral Chen asked, joining her at the viewport. Kethara considered the question carefully. I don't know. We're alive. Our children have a future. The monsters are gone. But sometimes I wonder what we've become. You've become protected, Chen replied.
Safe, free to pursue happiness without fear of destruction. Free, Kethara repeated softly.
Is that what you call this? Chen was quiet for a long moment. We didn't want this responsibility, she said finally. We didn't ask to become the galaxy's guardians. But someone has to be strong enough to keep the darkness at bay. Someone has to be willing to make the hard choices. And you've decided that someone is humanity. Humanity decided that when we saw what the Vexhai did to innocent beings. Chen corrected. We're not conquerors, Ambassador. We're protectors. Sometimes protection looks like oppression to those being protected. Kethara nodded slowly. Perhaps that was true. Perhaps the galaxy really did need guardians who were strong enough to impose peace and wise enough to use their power responsibly. Perhaps humanity really was different from the Vexhai, motivated by justice rather than greed. But as she watched human patrol ships disappear into hyperspace, carrying orders that would affect the lives of trillions of beings across the galaxy, she couldn't shake the feeling that the Coalition had summoned something they didn't fully understand. They had begged for help, and humanity had brought salvation. But salvation, it turned out, came with a price that would be paid by every free being in the galaxy for generations to come. The age of human protection had begun. Whether that was a blessing or a curse remained to be seen.